Oh, I need to go. Okay.
Alrighty.
I hope my important call is not going to come in our meeting.
Well, you'll let me know if it does. Good. I think we are live now. So yay, how exciting. Um, First and foremost, everyone, welcome. If you're just joining us, I am here today with Karen Wilcox, a former client of mine, and it's really great to see you, Karen. It's really great to kind of reconnect a little bit. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's nice to see you again. We spend a lot of
Yeah,
time together.
yes, we did. It was great. And yeah, I just would love for people to kind of know a little bit more about you. Um, Do you mind telling us, just for a little background about Karen? Karen did a few different things, but she was focused mainly on graphic design, and then she looked into transitioning more into user experience design.
Yeah.
So, Karen, with that, would you take it away and just kind of tell us a little bit about your background and why you decided to go more in a different direction?
Sure. So even before I was into graphics, I started with architecture. So I studied architecture. So I've always had a sort of an interest in that part in
Mm.
design, the design process. And then yes, I moved into graphics, and I had I tried to start up a little own business of creating stuff. So my career has always been very zigzag, and so I guess I've always been somebody that's always trying new things and saying, oh, I'm not sure about this and what could I add. And I guess when I guess I'd done graphics for maybe what 15, 16 years, and I was just a bit bored of it. And it was there was lots of things in my life that allowed for a change, and it was before COVID. So in when the COVID happened, I was like, okay, this is a real good moment. And so I started looking into UX, and slowly it became more and more clear that my whole zigzag sort of directed me really at UX. And so and because we were in the COVID, I was like, it was a great time to start reading about it, looking at it, and then I, found a course that suited me, and that's how I sort of, ended up meeting you.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing is that w- when we started realizing so much from your background, you had so many transferable skills that you brought from graphic design into user experience that I was always telling you in the beginning, it's not a real career change. You really bring so much valuable knowledge and experience that it was more of almost a natural evolution and
Yeah,
transition.
yeah, and
Um,
I think definitely true. And you really had to tell me that, because I really kept saying I'm changing career, where really I was adding a skill, I was adding knowledge.
and I think that's the thing is that when you came to me, I thought, wow, you're so impressive. You have all these great things, all these great things to contribute, especially to UX and this different experience as well from a classical user experience designer. So I definitely was really excited to see where you would end up. And I think that kind of goes into now. Tell us like kind of a little bit about that experience of this transition. Um, because I know a lot of people are telling me one of the biggest things is they are afraid of making a career change. And I always like to be realistic, but I do like people to see that it's possible. So take us through that a little bit.
So it was a lot tougher than I thought, because I've always been zigzagging. I was never afraid of saying, okay, I'm going to make a change, but I had I think, an optimism that I thought, it'd be much easier than it was,
Mm,
and I think the change was bigger than I thought. And if I think about it, where I am now, which I guess we'll come to, but at the time, I think it wasn't even, it was my struggle with myself, that I didn't believe I could do it, which put me down,
mm,
which I was setting my own obstacles, rather than I wasn't able to do it. And I think that's where you really came in, like, really important. You kept, iterating that. that, that I did have the skills, and it wasn't, that I was able to do it. And it took me, I think, a long time to believe, that. I think also because it was the COVID time, everything had to be done through LinkedIn, digital, whereas I'm a very person kind of person, and you
Yeah.
couldn't meet
Face
people.
to face
And that how I've always got my jobs, through connections, and it was a new way of learning to do digital networking, and that, which in the end got me the jobs, and it got me lots of interviews. But that I really had to learn that skill of how did you do that digital networking.
hmm And what would you say? How would you say that you learn digital networking? What would you say is the kind of the difference that you saw, and how are you able to utilize this?
How did I? Ooh, that's a difficult question. I think when I started working with you, we started just from the very beginning. It's sort of putting everything in order, making sure that all your digital presence, so my website, my LinkedIn, I spent hours on LinkedIn. I think, but tweaking it all the time. And I think in the end, that's why how I found my job.
Mhm.
But I remember the first time I had to write a letter, and you were like, no, this is not good enough. It needs to be this. It took me a whole week to write one letter. I must have done like 25 versions to get it right. But that was like the base, the sort of foundation, where I then based every letter on. And then I got really good at making them, but they were always personalized. And I think that's the one. And I get emails now, connection people, and you see, oh, that's a generic email. And the moment it's generic, you're not interested.
And you see now that you're on the flip side, you see exactly.
And I totally see that. And so I think that's the same when you try to do LinkedIn, well, because that's where you mainly do, I think, your digital networking. At least you start there, is it has to be genuine. So I met some really, really interesting people. Remy Guyot is one person I met, who's very well known in France. And I wrote him in the morning out of frustration. I just send an email to him. I say, oh, it's really great that you're saying this, but I think that's nonsense. And he responded, and we have a good relationship. And he helped me through trying to get a job. He looked at my stuff, and I think when you're genuine, and you're not necessarily complain, but try to make that personal connection when you're vulnerable and honest,
Yeah.
that really helps. But it takes time. I think you can't just go. I get people that like, do want to connect, make friends, and I just ignore it, because I'm like, you can't even say who you are or why you want to connect. And I would very happy help, because I've been there. But you need to show that it takes a lot of time. I was spending hours doing that. But in the end, I got so many job interviews by doing that. It was my struggle with myself that I maybe didn't get through. But that for me was key to get even all the interviews I had was you saw job interviews, so you would go, who's in that meeting, who's in that company, how can I connect, what connections do I have, what can I talk about, and
Mhm.
it's a full-time job, every job you do.
Yeah.
But that pays
I'm
off.
I'm I'm so glad you mentioned this, because I know people really think I'm crazy when I tell them this, and I try to really explain, this is key. This is how you get your foot in the door, and this is how you become active and in control of your own career destiny, is by getting in front of those people that are great connections. Maybe they don't have a job opening, but they can put you in touch with people, or they can even just advocate for you. Um,
Or even you have them there, and nothing happens with them, but you see them, I don't know, something might come up, and you can connect people. I really like try to put
yeah.
people together, and you just get I don't know, like a group of digital connections. It's I think
Yeah.
it's vital. So for me, LinkedIn was vital. I mean, it got me my job, um, and I got a lot of connection through that. I mean, every day I would change things, keywords, change the text. And that's why I think your introduction bit there is so key, as what you want to bring out. And you make these really long ones, and I think it's just the first paragraph. It can be really short and simple.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So great, so great. What would you say from your process, to tell people a little bit now, kind of explain where you are now and what you're doing on kind of a daily basis?
So talking about the networking, I'll just go back to the LinkedIn, because the
Oh yeah,
whole
please.
reason that I got the job where I'm working now was because I'd done my excellent tags and all the things that you could possibly do in LinkedIn. And I know, because I spoke to the recruiter after, and she said that within Adobe, what they do, they work, they pay a lot of money for LinkedIn, and then they
Mhm.
put all. So the person who I retired from, he said, all the requirements that he wanted, she put it into LinkedIn, and I came up with various other people. And so she sent me a message saying, "Hi," a very personal message. "Hi, so genuine and so sort of person that first I was like, Adobe, that this must be, I thought it was fraud. I didn't think it was real." And the only reason I actually responded, because I was, by that time I'd done 100, letters and nothing happened. And I had actually 2 other offers nearly there. But because of her way that she sent me the message, I was like, okay, I will respond. And she was, and she responded really quickly. And the next morning I had an interview, because I said I already have. And it all was because of the way, so I was found through LinkedIn, and she was
Using
really
those
personal.
keywords.
Yeah. And so she was really personal. Her message was the reason why I'm there. Because if it would have been a generic message, I'd have gone, I nearly got another job. I don't believe that really is Adobe. So again, that personal, that connecting got me the job. And they were really fast, and they really wanted me. And it was like from no jobs, it's 0 buses to 3 buses. And that, so even if you're like for 8 months, nothing's happening, it can change. And I had no offers to 3 in 1 week, and then
Yeah.
Adobe pushing as fast as they could, because I said I'm going to accept this other offer.
And they
Um,
wanted you. And I remember that moment too, that you even telling me like, "Oh, Adobe reached out to me," and I said, "Yes, someone who absolutely sees your value.
yeah,
Nice. I'm glad that people are seeing it."
yeah, and it
Uh,
really was like, I can't believe it. um, but yeah, and there again, it's that, just that genuine sort of, which you can totally do through digital, you know, ways.
yeah. It's definitely tone and not sounding. And that's why when people nowadays, I think it's great you can use ChatGPT as a tool to help you, but you have to be very careful because it takes out that meaningful connection and language of when you're being very genuine. So I say it's
You can
okay to
see
use
through
as
that.
a template, but be careful because that intimate connection through text is important.
I think people read. You can read through. It will say, "Hey there," because that, if you say informal chat, that's what ChatGPT comes up. I think you can use it as a starting point, and I would have definitely loved that for my letter, if I would have had a
Mhm.
starting point like that. But it's like, I don't know, like creativity. You start with something, but you evolve it into yours.
Yeah,
Um,
you make it your own.
so, but my day to day now. So I think my day to day. It's funny because I think other skills that I have really benefited in my job, and I didn't even see them as very valuable or useful at the time.
Yeah.
So it's the soft skills. It's trying, creating relationships. All of that now is like probably the key part of all my experience that sort of helps me in my job.
And that's
Uh,
quite interesting if you think about it, because as when you were doing graphic design, you were a freelancer, you worked with a lot of different clients, and that was your main thing, relationships, building
yeah,
relationships. And this is one of the key things that you've brought to Adobe.
it is, and it's because we're an online, we're a digital company, and I work with America, so you barely not you don't see people very often. So it's about keeping that relationship going.
Yeah.
And I never really realized, actually, I learned quite a lot, at the time. But I actually think graphic design isn't necessarily that useful as a background for UX, because I think one, graphic design is very subjective, and what I like with UX is more objective.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe it's just in the job that I have. It's not so much. I mean, we have a design system. We have, there's a lot of strict ways of how things should look if it looks like Adobe. Um, but I think it's probably your eye that helps, with the background from graphics. But for me, what helped me most is just being a freelancer and just juggling. I mean, we had a project where there was no project manager, and I end up just sort of taking that role, not because I wanted to, but for the job to succeed, we needed that. And then you realize there's all these
And you
other
had the skills and capacity
without
like to do
realizing.
that. Whereas there's other people who've never managed a project before and wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought I've never managed a project. It turns out, actually, I'd done many.
You had managed tons of your own projects. You
Yeah,
just
but
didn't think about it in that terms.
exactly. Yeah. So now I work on different projects. I work on their internet, and I work on the Adobe Live, which is the app, the mobile app that they have. And then I work with the legal team, so I do really a variety of things. And we're a team internally facing, so we work mainly for internal products, apart from as I mentioned. And we have a very interesting mix of team. There's now 20. I started it with 10. And we have UX researchers, we have strategists, we have service designers. There's a big mix of people, and we sort of work sort of as independent consultants on different parts within Adobe, which is good, but it's quite. I think I was hoping that I'd be more in a bigger team, because you learn so much from. I think that's the reason why I wanted to change from freelance to work with people was because you learn so much when you sit next to somebody. Like, oh, how do you do that? And that's how you present it. And I still like to learn more. There's every day you learn new things.
But that's very much your character. For those listening, Karen's already diving into the world of learning different things in service design now.
Passion. Yeah.
And I think this is great, because this just shows your continuous growth as a part of your career journey.
And that's really important in Adobe. They have a fund, and they expect their to constantly learn new things. And people, even if it's a hobby, but people are just constantly injecting new ideas, new thoughts, and I really enjoy that freedom.
Yeah, and great for creativity as well.
Yeah, I actually
think be exposed to different ideas. Just to be exposed to different ideas.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it can get overwhelming at times, because this, especially now with AI, there's so much going on that you can get overwhelmed in just information that comes from externally, but comes from within our company, and everybody, they want you to. We have to test our own products, and there's just like this. And it's really hard to have time to do deep thinking, deep learning, or to ring fence, to actually, I don't know, fully engage your brain into a problem or something.
It's a lot of moving parts, it's for sure, especially nowadays. There's just so many different factors to consider.
And we're talking a lot about how can you give people time back, and how can AI or other things, take the mundane, which gives back, because originality, intuition, things like that, AI just can't do. It hasn't got original thought. It only copies of existing data, and
what it's learned.
And only a human brain has that, power to actually think on the edges and
This is what I'm telling clients now when people are very concerned about changing their careers and they think that AI is going to replace them. And I say, yeah, AI is great, but it's a tool. It's a tool that we use. It's not going to completely replace us and all the jobs out there, because there's a lot of things you still need a human brain for. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I think things will shift, where the human brain is necessary, and a lot of things will probably get done by AI. But I think you can see when something's done by AI, and people in the end,
Yeah.
they don't want People always want the human, they want the rarity of something. If it's
Yeah.
available, they will always look for something that's not standard.
Yep. And I feel like that's very much human nature, right?
Yeah.
What would you say, like going through this journey, what would you say about your career coaching experience?
Oh, I can truly say that I couldn't have done it without you. I think the mental ups and
Really
downs,
nice.
um, it's just so like the first rejection is really hard. You're like, I've done everything. And then after the 10th rejection, you go, okay, you see your improvement of your first letter to the end, to that one. And you go through this whole emotional roller coaster of you're not good enough. Oh, the world is rubbish. There are no jobs, and you need to just constantly pull yourself up out of these dips. And I think especially after a while, I was really just angry with the world, and I was ready just to throw it into the towel and throw the towel in. And I remember going, I'm going back to graphics. And I remember having one interview for graphic jobs, and I was just so not prepared because, I hadn't had any of my, my portfolio sort of aimed at that. So she was asking me
Yeah.
questions, and then I realized actually what I have, is quite good. But it's an emotional roller coaster, and you have to keep being. It's like you're a mirror and going, you are good enough. But in the end, it's you have to do it. I have to do it.
Yeah.
You're only sort of a sounding board that pulls you up. But in the end, I mean, it needs resilience, grit, all that, Carol Dweck kind
Yes.
of talk.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I mean that's what I always tell people. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. It's really hard to change careers. It's really hard to go for another role, especially with everything that's out there and all the things to take into consideration. It will knock your self confidence. And I'm always telling people it's not you. It's just the system. This is not a personal rejection. And I mean, you know this. I've said this plenty to you,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's absolutely it's it is at the end of the day. I always tell people I'm always in your corner. I'm always here for you, but you gotta meet me here. Like we've gotta push through.
You have to want to do it 150%.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's really tough.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If you want to make a change, it's always hard.
Mm.
But
But
it's pretty much always worth it. And if
I
one
was about that was my question. Is it worth it?
for me, it totally was. Um, and the whole experience actually has given me more confidence that I had, that I was capable of doing it. And I think, and you always have to remember, one door closes, another one always opens.
Opens. Yeah.
But you can't always see it at the time, I think.
I mean, yeah, it's always, I mean, when you're in the thick of it, it's really, really hard to see what the light is going to look like on the other side.
And I have a question for you. And do you think people that decide that they want to change their career, do people do that once in their life? Or is that a certain person, like me, that will do it once and again and again and again? And because that
Yeah.
also gives you confidence.
So it's really interesting you say this. So there is, to an extent, there is a type of person that is more likely to do a career change than others. So I have, of course, worked with and come across in my life people that have changed their career several times now. Um, and that's because there's not so much of that fear of changing. Most people who don't change, it's really fear that holds them back.
Risk gains.
Yeah. Risk adverse people that are really, really afraid of failure. Um, but I do find, I think it's like anytime you do anything, once you do it once, the feeling that you can do it again, it becomes more plausible. It becomes, oh, well, I already did it once. So
Mm,
if they would want to change again, they could. I think it
yeah.
depends very much on when people change their career as if they would want to do it again. I always joke, I love my job. I love being a career coach. I love supporting people, but I'm not opposed to one day if there's something else that sparks my interest changing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we only have one life and we should really live
Yeah.
it to the fullest.
But I also think that you shouldn't change your career if you're sort of paralyzed by fear, because then it's going to be such a horrible experience. You need to sort of be, I think, energized by the uncertainty. You need to also thrive of wanting change and be willing to sit in that really uncomfortable
I think it's
zone.
this.
You know,
You can
not
still
everybody
have,
can do that.
yeah, you can still have fear, but you have to decide, I'm going to push through it now.
Hmm.
And I think that's a lot with career coaching is that, people that are afraid, I tell people it's okay to be afraid.
Mm,
But you show up and you still put in 150% because if
mm.
you really want it, you have to put in the effort to get it.
And I think
And
only then will it work. You
yeah,
can't put it at 50, you won't get anywhere. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the problem is that, there are some people, I'm quite blunt. I don't work with every person that comes to me and wants to do career coaching because if I see that someone is not there really wanting to make that change, they like the idea of a career change, but
Mhm.
mentally they're not really prepared for it, or they just think of it as a nice idea. I tell them, hey, I don't think I'm the coach for you. I'm
Mm.
sorry. But that's because, in good conscience, I can't have someone sign up to work with me when I don't believe that they're yet there. And they can always change. People can always change, but it's important before you start that you're at a certain level.
But then at the same time, that's a really important conversation to have, because maybe by thinking that they want to change, have the conversation with you and realize actually it's not for me and my job's actually okay. So that's almost an equal important conversation to have. Like, do I actually want to take the turn, or am I going to go straight on? Which,
Yeah, and sometimes we find this, like I have introduction calls often where we find out someone actually does want to change their job. They want to change they don't want to change their career. They actually just want to change their job. There's some
yeah,
people who realize, oh, actually, I don't mind my job. I've really had people come to me and realize later it's actually not their job that's the
mm,
problem. It's
yeah,
other elements in their life. They thought it was the job because they were miserable at work, but they were miserable at work from outside things in their life that they were bringing into work. So I joke sometimes I figure out people's other problems and then I'm like, well, I'm not the person for you. You'll have to go and seek out a life coach or seek out a therapist.
yeah.
Because
But
yeah,
that's
but
but
I love just that people even do the introduction call with me because then even if it's not me that they need, they're
yeah,
figuring out what they need and they can take a step in the right direction.
it's figuring out what the problem is, not just putting a
Exactly.
solution to it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm being mindful of time. But I just would like you maybe to kind of like explain because when people are trying to get to know me, it's of course people always have an introduction call when they get to know me as a coach, but I always find it hard to kind of describe me or my style of coaching. What would you say? How would you describe me and my coaching to kind of give people an
I'd
idea if
say
they're interested?
tough love, definitely. And I really appreciated that, because I knew it was hard, and I knew that to be able to do it, I had to have hard feedback at times. That letter isn't good. That's not how you do it, or that's not how. And so I think you need to be able to take criticism, feedback, but I really believe in always an honest and open relationship, which is what I really like working with you. Um, and it was a real sort of almost like a pull and push up the hill. I was like, oh, come on. So it was sort of, and I guess you have to, you expect a lot from me, and therefore I have to expect a lot from myself as well, because otherwise it's not going to work. You both have to sort of work hard at it. And it can be, I remember just that first week of writing that letter, and I was just like, oh, and I knew it wasn't good enough, and it was, I must have done it like 30 times, and it was such a painful process. But in the end, I was
I
like, wow.
remember.
And I was so glad that you were like, no, that's not, do it again, do it again, do it again, and it was worth it, because in the end, it was a super letter that I could mold to whatever, not too much
Whatever
time.
situation. Yeah.
But that was the hardest letter I've ever written.
Yeah. And I knew, and that's the thing. I always feel
I've
like,
never done it before,
yeah.
really, because I always got jobs through connection. So,
And that's the thing, when you do a job search that's different than how you're used to doing it, it's completely different, and you have to learn it from scratch. And
yeah.
I knew you could do better. I wanted people to see you how I see you. And that's why I thought, if I don't tell you, who's going to? And rather than you wasting time sending out a letter that doesn't do you justice, I would rather tell you, no, we gotta fix this. Try again.
I think it was part of the process that I had to know that I was good enough. And and I think it took so long because it took me so long to sort of, I guess, see my own qualities. Because
But
you
it's
always
a
look
journey.
around and like, oh, they're amazing, and everybody's always amazing, and so I think the long
Yeah.
time of that was that.
And I think, yeah, it's a journey for everyone. There's so many people who when it's yourself, it's harder to see all the qualities that you have, whereas a friend, you would you wouldn't think twice before saying they're amazing, they're wonderful, they can do this, this, this.
And but I think what is also really important, if you get rejected, maybe it's not even your letter, because like in our team, it's really important the personality of what they are. Do they fit in the team? So
Yeah.
even you might be the best person, maybe that team needs a different type of person, or because I think people don't take somebody on just for what they've done in their CV. They
Yeah,
need,
no.
it's a character thing. Does it fit in, you know, in the team? We have a really great team sort of spirit, and that's definitely because the manager has taken great care in finding people that they know that could, because you can have
That
one
will work and
person,
function in that team.
you can have one person that doesn't work, and it can destroy the whole sort of team ambiance. So I think, it's not just what you have on your CV and your letter, it's also who you are. You might be a brilliant person, but just not right for that particular company.
And that's what I tell people too. And I say, don't take it personal if they don't want you, because maybe it's a culture fit. And I said, because you are right for someone, it's just you're maybe not right for them. And I say, that's okay, because at the end of the day, would you want to work there either? And you don't feel aligned with them and you feel a mismatch? I'm
We'll have
like,
to go through it again.
yeah.
The job
And
hunt.
And yeah, and when you're in the job hunt, people are usually telling me, I don't care, I just want a job. And I'm like, I know you say that now, but hang on.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was the case with you as well. You saw that you were getting really frustrated and you just wanted a job. And then you find somewhere that aligned really well with you, that saw your value, that instantly knew your transferable skills.
Yeah. Yeah, but you still, I'm still sometimes like, oh, am I good enough? And I guess you will always have that.
There's more and more studies about imposter syndrome that says, actually, if you're questioning if you're good enough, it's actually that you are.
Really?
Yeah, they've done several studies now that people who question if they're good enough, it's because they're always striving to be better and to be better and to be better.
So it was very interesting. Scott Belsky, one of the Behance founder, who's I think the strategy officer at Adobe, he was saying, somebody said, well, what made you qualified for the job? And he said, I'm not qualified for the job. That, I wasn't qualified, but that was why I took the job. And I think that's a sort of a good way to,
Yeah, absolutely. Because
that's all right then. If I feel I'm not good enough, if he thinks that's all right, then
and you wouldn't think that. You would say, what? This guy's amazing.
Yeah, but it's taking time for him. It takes time. It takes sometimes it takes too much time. That's my impatience.
I mean, I'm the same as you when it comes to impatience. So I think sometimes it is a constant work on yourself. It's a mindset, and it's really those really thinking differently. I mean, that does take time.
Yeah, and you have to just remember that you can't. I always look at a plane and I think, well, that plane can't go any faster. And then I think, I can't. You're in a tempo and a speed, and you can't change it. however much I want to get more experience quicker, and you know,
It's about enjoying the process as well.
yes, absolutely. Yes.
Good. I know that you have plenty of things to do with Adobe, so I will let you get back to that. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm sure we will catch up at another time.
Well, I wish everybody lots of luck, and I hope it's helped. And
Yeah,
hang in
thank you
there.
so much.
What is the saying? If it's not good enough, it's not finished. Or what is it? There's a saying.
Oh yeah.
Was that film, the Marigold Hotel, where he says, if it's I can't remember the saying. That's a terrible ending of your chat.
No, I'm going to look it up, and then this is what people can wait for. I'm going to update people. I'm going to go look because I know what you mean, and I can't think of it either, but it is a good one to end on. So I'll be sharing this later, everyone.
Well, I wish everyone lots of luck, and thank you again, Suzanne, for all your help.
Thank you so much, and happy Friday to you.
Yes, you too.
Yep.
Bye.